You had a terrible day. Your inbox is a disaster. Someone said something that stung. You're tired in a way that sleep won't fix. And somehow, 20 minutes later, you're scrolling a shopping app with something already in your cart. You don't even want it, not really. But putting it there felt like the first good thing that happened all day. Here's the strange part. This isn't random. It isn't a coincidence that your worst days are also your most expensive ones. There's a name for it now, doom spending. And underneath the name is a piece of ancient wiring that has almost nothing to do with money at all. Start with the feeling itself, not the purchase, the feeling right before it, a tightness in the chest, a kind of static behind the eyes. Your brain in that moment isn't thinking about your bank balance. It's trying to solve a much older, much simpler problem. It's trying to feel safe again, right now, by any means available. And for most of human history, the fastest way to feel safe again was to do something. Move, act, change your circumstances in some small, immediate way. Buying something is one of the few actions modern life still allows you to take in a single tap, with an immediate visible result. You feel bad, you act. The screen confirms your action worked. Something shifted, even if that something was just your bank balance. Psychologist Jennifer Lerner at Harvard ran a study that put a number on this. She and her colleagues found that sadness specifically, not just any negative emotion, made people willing to pay significantly more for the exact same object compared to people in a neutral mood. They called it the myopic misery effect. Myopic because in that moment, your focus narrows sharply onto the present. Misery because it's specifically sadness, that heavy, stuck feeling that seems to trigger it. The people in her study weren't choosing badly because they were careless. They were choosing badly because sadness had temporarily shrunk their entire field of vision down to right now. Think about what that means. It isn't that a bad mood makes you slightly more likely to spend. It's that a bad mood changes the shape of the decision itself. Future consequences, which normally sit somewhere in the back of your mind while you shop, get pushed almost entirely out of frame. What's left is just the object and the immediate promise it seems to offer. Lerner's team didn't stop at proving the effect existed. They also asked what specifically about sadness made it happen, and their answer points somewhere unexpected. It isn't really about the object being purchased at all. It's about a felt sense of stuckness. Sadness, unlike anger or fear, tends to come with a feeling that your current situation is fixed and unlikely to change on its own. Anger pushes you to confront something. Fear pushes you to escape something. Sadness, according to this research, pushes you to change your circumstances by whatever means are available, because the emotion itself is signaling that waiting will not improve things. A purchase is one of the few circumstances an ordinary person can change immediately, without needing anyone else's cooperation, without needing to win an argument or fix a relationship or solve a work problem. It is, in a very literal sense, one of the last remaining levers within arm's reach. There's a second study, run by researcher Cynthia Cryder, that dug even deeper into this. Her team found that sad participants weren't just willing to pay more, they also valued their own possessions less. Give someone in a sad mood an object they already own, and ask them to price it, and they'll price it lower than someone in a neutral mood would. Cryder and her colleagues called their paper "Misery is Not Miserly," and the title captures something important. You'd expect sadness to make people cautious, tight-fisted, protective of what they have. It does the opposite. Sadness loosens your grip on everything, both what you're about to buy and what you already own. The researchers linked this to something deeper than simple impulsiveness. Sadness signals at some old biological level that your current situation isn't working. And when your current situation isn't working, the instinct isn't to hold on to what you have. It's to change something, anything, to escape the state you're in. Now here's where it gets older than either of those studies. Neither Lerner's team nor Cryder's team invented this mechanism. They just measured something that was already running underneath. Something biologist Robert Sapolsky spent decades studying in a very different context. Sapolsky researched stress hormones, particularly cortisol, and how they reshape behavior, not in shoppers, but in wild baboons on the African savanna, and later in stress-related illness in humans. What he found again and again is that the stress response isn't built for careful, weighted, long-term decision-making. It's built for fast action under threat. Cortisol sharpens certain kinds of attention while narrowing others. It pulls resources away from slow, deliberate reasoning and pushes them toward quick, reactive behavior. That system evolved to get an animal out of immediate danger, a predator in the grass, a rival at the edge of camp. It was never built to sit quietly while you compare prices on a screen. Picture what that combination actually does inside you on a bad day. Something stressful happens. Cortisol rises. Your capacity for slow, weighing the future thinking drops, just like it would if you were facing a real physical threat. At the exact same moment, a phone in your pocket offers you an action that produces instant, visible, positive feedback. A confirmation screen, a little animation, a sense that you did something. Your ancient stress system isn't built to evaluate whether that action was financially wise. It's built to reward you for taking any action at all, because for most of your species' history, taking action under stress was almost always better than freezing. Sapolsky's research also points at something else worth sitting with, which is how much the length and predictability of stress matters. A short, sharp burst of stress, the kind your ancestors felt when a threat appeared and then resolved one way or another within minutes, is what your cortisol system was actually built to handle. What it was never built to handle is the modern version, a low, constant hum of stress that never fully resolves, an inbox that refills every time you empty it, a string of bad days with no clear endpoint. Under that kind of prolonged, unresolved stress, the same hormone that once sharpened your focus for a single dangerous moment instead stays elevated for hours or days, quietly wearing down the very system you'd need to make a careful purchase decision. This is where the phrase doom spending starts to make more sense than it first appears. It isn't really about doom, in the sense of the news or the economy or any particular headline. It's about the doom feeling, that specific heavy sense that things are going wrong and you have no lever to pull. Spending becomes a lever. It's one of the only levers left in a world where most of your actual stressors, your job, your relationships, larger economic forces, can't be fixed with a single tap. There's a researcher named George Loewenstein who has spent much of his career studying what he calls visceral factors, the raw physical and emotional states, hunger, pain, sadness, craving, that override slower, more rational forms of decision-making. Loewenstein's work suggests something uncomfortable. In the grip of a strong visceral state, people don't just make worse decisions. They often can't fully access the version of themselves who would make better ones. The calm, budget-conscious person you are on a good day genuinely isn't fully present on a bad one. It's not that they've been overruled by weak willpower. It's that a different, older system has temporarily taken the wheel. Think back to what that system was built for. Somewhere in your evolutionary history, a bad feeling meant something specific and physical: hunger, cold, a predator nearby, isolation from the group. And in that world, action solved it. You moved toward food, you built a fire, you found your camp. The feeling and the fix were physically connected. Modern life has kept the feeling, but severed it from any physical fix. Your inbox disaster doesn't have a fire you can build. Your bad news doesn't have a predator you can outrun. So the ancient system reaches for the nearest thing that still delivers the shape of a solution, an action, a result, a small win, even if the actual problem underneath is left completely untouched. This explains something else about doom spending that purely financial explanations miss. The purchases rarely fix the original problem. You still have the difficult inbox. You still feel the sting from what was said. But for a few minutes, something shifted, and that shift was enough to quiet the alarm, temporarily. The relief isn't about the object at all. It's about proving to your own nervous system that you're not powerless. Then the packaging arrives a few days later, the feeling has usually already passed, and what's left is just the bill and a slightly confused sense of why you bought it in the first place. So what actually helps here? Not willpower and not shame, both of which assume the problem is a lack of discipline rather than a mismatch between an ancient alarm system and a modern shopping cart. Researchers building on this work have found that introducing even a small delay, a mandatory pause between the impulse and the purchase, works far better than trying to argue yourself out of the feeling in the moment. That delay doesn't fight the stress response. It just gives a slower, future-weighing part of your brain enough time to come back online after the cortisol spike passes. Some people build this in literally, a rule that nothing goes in the cart and gets paid for on the same day. Others have found that naming the feeling out loud, saying this is doom spending, not need, does something similar because naming a feeling is one of the few actions that engages the slower system directly without requiring you to talk yourself out of the underlying stress. There's also something worth noticing in Lerner's original research that rarely gets mentioned. The effect wasn't permanent. It faded once the sad mood lifted, which means the vulnerable window is smaller than it feels in the moment. You are not permanently a bad decision maker. You are, for a stretch of maybe an hour or an evening, running on a system that evolved for a world with fires and predators, not one with checkout pages open in 6 tabs. There's a broader implication here that goes beyond any one purchase. Financial psychologist Scott Rick, who has spent years studying the difference between what he calls spendthrifts and tightwads, has found that most people don't actually have a fixed, stable relationship with money at all. What looks like a personality trait, someone being generally careful or generally impulsive with spending, often turns out to be far more situational than it appears. The same person can behave like a careful saver on a calm week and an impulsive spender during a stretch of stress, without any change in their underlying values or goals. Rick's research suggests that treating doom spending as a fixed character flaw misses what's actually happening. It isn't who you are. It's the weather system you happen to be standing inside on a given day, and weather systems pass. So the next time you catch yourself on a terrible day, cart already filling with something you don't quite need, it might help to remember what's actually happening underneath it. It isn't weakness, and it isn't really about the object at all. It's an old system, still trying to hand you back a sense of control, the only way it knows how, in a world that stopped handing out fires and predators a very long time ago, but never got around to updating the alarm.